Before we even open the file, I need you to forget everything you think you know about this industry. Forget the scented candles, the yoga mats, and the influencer retreats in Bali. Wipe that slate clean.
That is a big ask. That imagery is literally everywhere. It is the face of the brand.
It is the camouflage. It is the soft, aesthetic skin over a very hard, very cold financial skeleton. We are not talking about a lifestyle movement today. We are talking about a $6.8 trillion algorithmic shift in the global economy.
6.8 trillion. That is a number that is hard to even visualize.
Exactly. And that is why we are here, to tear apart the hull of this ship and see what the engine room actually looks like. Because when you look at the data, really look at it, you realize this is not about feeling good. It is about structural survival.
You are framing this like a financial thriller rather than a wellness report.
Because that is what it is. It is a story about where capital is fleeing to as the traditional systems start to fracture. It is about patent wars, glacial melt, neuroimaging, and geopolitical sovereignty.
Okay, you have my attention. Let's get into the evidence.
Open the document. Let's look at page 1.
All right, I am looking at the title slide here. The $6.8 trillion algorithm. The visual is striking. It is a Buddha, but it is dissolving into digital tickers.
That is the double exposure of our reality. The ancient wisdom is being digitized and monetized. Look at the bullet points. The global wellness economy has hit a peak of $6.8 trillion.
It says here it is larger than pharma, IT, and sports sectors combined. That sounds impossible. The IT sector drives the modern world. How can wellness be bigger?
Because wellness has become the operating system for the human component of the IT sector. Think about it. We have moved beyond the luxury of health into the necessity of optimization. The IT sector is the machine. Wellness is the maintenance contract for the operators of that machine.
So you are saying this growth, this 7.9% surge mentioned in the script, isn't just people wanting to be fit.
No. Look at the context. Global GDP is limping along at 3.2%. Meanwhile, the business of keeping you well is sprinting at double that speed. That tells you something fundamental about late-stage capitalism.
That the system is breaking.
That the system is breaking. And this $6.8 trillion is the desperate hedge against that collapse. We are building a life raft, a very expensive $10 trillion life raft projected by 2029.
It is a terrifying thought that we are monetizing our own survival instinct to that degree.
It is the business of staying alive, and the companies winning this game know that. They are not selling enlightenment. They are selling insulation.
Which brings us to the next section, moving to page 2.
This is the blue pill.
The visual here is cold. A spa, but it looks more like a clinic. And the reflection in the water glass is a chaotic city street.
That contrast is the entire product pitch. The world outside is chaotic, toxic, and stressful. The world inside the wellness bubble is controlled, purified, and optimized.
The data here is aggressive. The market rebounded 35% above pre-pandemic levels. But look at the leader, wellness, real estate, growing at nearly 20% annually.
That is the key stat. Wellness, real estate. We are not just visiting spas anymore. We are living in them. This is about retrofitting our homes, our cages, with circadian lighting, hospital-grade air filtration, and biophilic designs.
Valued at $548 billion. That is $500 billion spent on just making our physical environments less hostile.
Precisely. And the script nails it. This growth isn't driven by joy. It is driven by fear. It is a trauma response to global instability. If you cannot control the climate crisis outside, or the political instability, you control the air quality in your penthouse.
It calls it a mandatory tax on the wealthy. That is a cynical way to put it.
Is it wrong, though? If you want to function at a high level in a degrading environment, you have to pay the toll. You have to buy the blue pill.
And then, there is the mental wellness sector, sitting at $268 billion.
Apps, coaching, therapy. We are outsourcing our emotional regulation to the market because the community structures that used to handle it have dissolved.
So we have the software, the apps, and the mental health, and we have the shell, the real estate. But where is the raw material coming from? Where is the source of this wellness?
That is the question nobody asks. We consume these products, the yoga, the breathing techniques, the herbs, as if they just appear on a shelf. But they have a geography. Turn to page 3.
The third pole. We are looking at a wireframe map of the Himalayas.
This is the hardware, the physical engine room of the entire Eastern wellness industry. We call it the third pole because, outside of the Arctic and Antarctic, this is the largest deposit of ice on Earth.
The water tower of Asia. It says it supports 1.65 billion people.
It feeds the Indus, the Ganges, the Brahmaputra. This geological collision between the Indo-Australian and Eurasian plates didn't just create mountains. It created the hydrological system that allowed civilizations and their medical traditions to exist.
But the slide says the hardware is failing. Glaciers retreating 10 to 60 meters per year.
Imagine a factory where the roof is collapsing while the workers are still trying to ship product. That is what we are doing. We are extracting the intellectual property of yoga and Ayurveda from a region that is physically collapsing.
The glacial lake outburst floods mentioned here. GLOF. That sounds catastrophic.
It is. These are ticking time bombs. The ice melts, forms unstable lakes, and then the dam bursts. It wipes out hydropower plants, villages, and infrastructure downstream.
So while we are in New York or London, sitting in our wellness real estate with filtered air, the actual source of the tradition we are practicing is melting away.
We are extracting biological and intellectual resources from a dying system. It is the ultimate irony. We want the software, the meditation, the herbs, but we are ignoring the fact that the server farm is on fire.
Geography dictates destiny. That is a heavy line.
And money dictates behavior, which is why we need to understand the economic logic deeper than just sales figures. Go to page 4.
Return on investment. This visual is intense, a brain scan merging with a spreadsheet.
This is why Johnson & Johnson, Google, and Apple care. This isn't altruism. It is a calculation. The data shows that wellness programs return $6 for every $1 invested.
That is a 600% return. Where is that savings coming from?
Medical costs drop by $3.27. Absenteeism drops. But look at the neuroscience. This is the real software update.
The brain PAD concept. Negative brain, predicted age difference.
Exactly. They used machine learning on MRI scans of expert meditators. These are people with 20 years of practice. Their brains are structurally younger than their chronological age.
They have preserved gray matter in the frontal and parietal lobes,
which are the exact regions that degrade with Alzheimer's and stress. In an information economy, your brain is your primary asset. If that asset depreciates, you lose money.
So meditation is essentially a maintenance protocol, like changing the oil in a car.
Or updating the firmware. If you can stop the cognitive decline of your workforce, you have a massive competitive advantage. The system has calculated that it is cheaper to teach you to breathe than it is to replace you when you burn out.
That is incredibly practical and incredibly cold. It strips the spirituality right out of it.
It translates the spirituality into the only language the global market understands: efficiency.
But if this knowledge is so valuable, if it is literally saving billions of dollars and preserving human brains, who owns it?
Now you are asking the dangerous question. Look at page 5.
The source code. And the subtitle is Biopiracy.
You cannot run the software if you don't own the source code. For decades, Western pharmaceutical and wellness companies tried to patent the commons. They tried to patent turmeric for wound healing. They tried to patent neem.
Things that have been used in Indian households for thousands of years.
Exactly. They tried to privatize ancient wisdom, but India fought back. They built the TKDL, the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library.
34 million pages, digitized. That is a staggering amount of data.
It is a defensive firewall. They translated ancient texts, Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, Yoga, into 5 international languages and formatted them specifically for patent examiners in the USA and Europe.
So if a company in Germany tries to patent a yoga pose or an herbal remedy,
the patent examiner enters the search. The TKDL pops up, and it says prior art, denied. It costs $0 and takes a few weeks. Before this, it took millions of dollars and years of court battles to revoke a single patent.
The slide says 36 patent applications were canceled in Europe alone.
It is a geopolitical war over wisdom. The West wants the molecule. The East says, we wrote the manual and you cannot claim you invented it. It is an assertion of sovereignty.
It is protecting the lineage, but there is a disconnect, isn't there? We are protecting the texts, and we are using the techniques, but we are missing something.
We are missing the operating instructions. We have the code, but we don't know how to run it without crashing the system. This brings us to page 6.
The glitch. This is a fascinating concept. Himalayan moral climate.
This is where the Western integration of Eastern wellness fails. In the modern secular view, the environment is a resource to be used. In the Himalayan worldview, the environment is a reactive moral mirror.
The slide mentions Yola landscape deities.
The locals believe that the weather isn't just meteorology, it is morality. If you pollute, if you act with greed, if you disrespect the land, the asterisk Yola asterisk retaliate. They send blizzards. They send floods.
So climate change isn't just seen as carbon emissions. It is seen as a result of human ethical failure.
They call it Kawanayampa, the era of degeneration. The decline of human virtue physically manifests as the melting of the snow.
That hits hard because the West is doing exactly what the bad ethics warn against. We are commercializing the wellness, flying in tourists, burning plastic, all to achieve mindfulness.
We want the optimization without the morality. We want to be better capitalists, using tools designed to transcend capitalism. That is the glitch. We are treating the symptom, stress, while feeding the disease, extraction.
And the result is that the hardware from slide 3 is melting because of the behavior in slide 2. It is all connected.
Which leads us to the inevitable conclusion. We cannot keep separating these things. Finally, page 7.
The horizon, $10 trillion.
By 2029, this economy hits nearly 10 trillion. But the text here is what matters, the convergence of Cold War physics and Eastern thought.
It mentions Fritjof Capra, the idea that quantum mechanics mirrors Eastern mysticism.
In the 1970s, that was counterculture hippie philosophy. Today, it is the only viable economic blueprint. We are moving toward an epistemic science. Meaning we have to realize that the world is a dynamic web of relations, not separate parts. You cannot fix the human without fixing the environment. You cannot have a healthy economy on a sick planet.
It says here, survival requires a new epistemic science.
The wellness economy is no longer a fringe industry for people who like incense. It is the lifeboat. As the physical world fractures under the weight of the Anthropocene, the only way forward is to integrate these ancient technologies, systems thinking, cooperation, preservation, into global governance.
So the horizon isn't a destination.
It is a merger, East and West, science and spirit, economy and ecology. They are entangled particles in a $10 trillion quantum field.
And if we don't adapt,
then we dissolve. The geography is screaming. The patents are being revoked, and the brain scans are clear. We either upgrade our operating system to match the reality of our planet, or we crash.
That is a sobering place to end, but it makes that $6.8 trillion figure look very different. It is not just profit, it is the price of admission for the future.
Welcome to the business of staying alive.